Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Alexia, and I am the program manager of the Microsoft Reactor Toronto. I will be sharing session resources with you in the chat. But before we begin, I'd like to quickly review two items: our code of conduct and event guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our code of conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. And secondly, our event guidelines. The session is being recorded and will be available on demand through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I'll be sharing the link in the chat for our on-demand content. And if you have not been on a live stream to YouTube before, please note that you must create an account on YouTube in order to have access and interact in the chat. You can set that up now. And if you're unable to use the chat but have questions, feel free to reach out to us through social media or on our website. Which brings us to today's session. I'm going to bring in our speaker here today. Liji, hi.
Hi.
It's so great to have you on the Reactor. Thank you so much for hosting this session with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Well, without further ado, take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session on building tomorrow's AI solutions. My name is Liji Thomas. I'm a Microsoft MVP in AI, and I'm delighted to have this next hour with you to talk about some of the most exciting things that we are seeing in this space. Let's get rolling. So the agenda for the day, we would be covering a couple of high-level topics on agents, RAG, and Copilots. The way this is going to work is based on a lot of content that we have seen from the last Ignite 2024, which happened late 2024, in November 2024. There's been a lot of announcements in Ignite, and we will this is probably an amalgamation of all the great content that was presented over a couple of days at Ignite as part of the season of AI, season 3. I'd like to collect all of that and share with you some of the most important announcements and the greatest updates. And yes, there will probably a couple of updates after that. Things change quite fast in the space that we are in. So I try to keep us up to date on that as well. But in general, the high-level topics that we'd be looking at today is agents, RAG, and Copilots. Again, we'll talk about each of those in detail. So moving us along, let's start with agents. We talk about all the great stuff that people talked about and announced in Ignite. So one of the first things that I'd like to talk about is about agents itself. Probably very few of you have not heard the word agent. It's, as it said in the deck, and I just love the slide. It's one of the most overused term in the industry at this point, to the point that we, even a normal person would be like, what really is agents at this point? So I really liked this definition simply because it was so relatable. It is simple, but it resonates well with a normal person. So, as it said in that definition, what agents really mean is a semi-autonomous software. You can give it a goal, and it will work to achieve that goal for you. But you don't have to know in advance exactly how it's going to go about doing that and the exact sequence of steps that it's going to take. And if you connect that to the literal meaning of the word agency, you say that a human operates with high agency, it makes a lot of sense, right? So having agency over it means you are able to accomplish your goals and your outcomes without really having an understanding of or a full-fledged details of how you would actually do that in advance. There's a lot, as agents take up tasks, there is a lot of planning and execution that happens, but then that's part of the process. So with that shared understanding of what an agent is. An agent, as a reminder, is a semi autonomous software or a system. You give it a goal to achieve. It can use tools, or it uses tools or can use tools to achieve that goal. The exact steps of which tools it's going to use and when it decides to use it is not explicitly specified upfront. So, to make these agentic systems a little bit easier, they have released a couple of tools and a platform by the name of Azure AI Foundry. Azure AI Foundry was probably the biggest announcement at Ignite, and Azure AI Foundry, to be simply put, it is a collection of tools that make it easy to help you build, customize, evaluate, and operate Gen AI applications. So you can use a pro code experience, you can use a low code experience. But what makes Azure AI Foundry really unique is that you can customize every layer as like the entire part of the stack. So, for example, you can bring your own models. There are over 1,800 models in the catalog today. You can bring your multiple data sources from Azure. You can customize the safety systems. So, with all that customization, obviously, there is a responsible section to it as well. And we'll talk about the shared responsibility principle. But Azure AI Foundry, I think, is a good start, is a one-stop shop for all the tools that you would require as a builder, as a developer, to build, customize, evaluate, and that entire life cycle of a Gen AI application itself. So within Azure AI Foundry now, there's been a couple of announcements and updates. So we'll talk through each of that. So Azure AI Agent Service. So that was brand new. It was announced at Microsoft Ignite. So Agent AI Service, if you're familiar with the previous Assistance API, Azure AI Agent Service is just sprinkling some enterprise goodness and adding additional tools like Bing Search and SharePoint Search, Fabric AI skills, and Azure Functions, and all of that. So it brings it together. Now, I will say, as of today, Azure AI Agent Service is in public preview. So it was probably announced at Ignite, but it's moved ahead a lot faster. So, uh, to recap, Azure AI Agent Service is a feature within Azure AI Foundry. So, Azure AI Foundry is really the comprehensive platform, if I may, to design that was designed to enable the developers to quickly and securely innovate with AI applications. So, it gives you the tools, it gives you the capabilities, whatever you need for AI development, management, and deployment. But Azure AI Agent Service, it specifically focuses on the creation, deployment, and management of AI agents. So it can perform tasks autonomously or in collaboration with humans. So now that is a part of Foundry. So if I have to double click on that, what you get as part of the agent service is this. So it helps you deploy agents easily. Is kind of a full package. So it is the Azure OpenAI Assistance API together with all kinds of tools that you can use. So an agent requires, seamless integration with the right tools, systems, and APIs to perform. So it needs to be able to manage the conversation with you, and those are things that you don't want to reinvent the wheel and do it all by yourself. So you want to be able to just choose the model that you want, which fits the purpose of your use case. You don't want to be locked into one very specific model as well. You want to be able to switch as needed. And so there's a lot of enterprise goodness that is built into this. It needs to be enterprise ready and you need to be able to run at scale. So a lot of those essential core features that are required is abstracted at the platform layer so that you can focus on the specifics of the business case. That's what Foundry and Agent Service does for you. Now, a very common question that gets asked is, well, I have so many ways to now create an agent. Which one do I use? So here's a quick, and I like this slide in the breakout session 102. And I did want to call out that all of these slides that have been taken from the various sessions that were taken. The name of the session is actually placed in the bottom left corner so that you can refer to or learn more from attending those breakout sessions, which are the videos are available on the Ignite website. It's available on YouTube and as such. So, yeah, going back to our question, like, how do I know what to use or which one do I use to actually build agents? So, a couple of options. If you want to build a single agent, you can deploy agents with Azure AI Foundry. We just talked about that right now. If you want to start creating multi-agent systems, you can start using a framework called AutoGen. It's available in Python. You can research and prototype very easily. When you decide you like what you're seeing, you want to move into production, you can use the production ready and stable SDK from Semantic Kernel, which gives you the opportunity to work in C Sharp or Python or Java as need be. So there are different capabilities that you would want to try based on what you want to have accomplished, whether it's a single agent or it's a multi-agent. So a couple of options there as far as agents are concerned. Now, back to Foundry, I'd say there is it was announced a newly launched Azure AI Foundry SDK. As I said, Foundry, you can work with it in two ways. You can use a low code approach, you can use a pro code approach. So I prefer to start in the portal, in the Foundry portal, because it just helps me play around and explore with all the capabilities quickly. And then there's always an option for me to use the SDK to communicate with the same Azure Foundry so that you can do everything in code if that's your preference. So you can create projects to do inferences on all the APIs that are there. You can use Azure AI Search to ground your model. You can deploy these applications using templates. It's all there. So that's one option also that you have additionally. So this is just a recap, a summary of that. You can use Azure AI Foundry SDK to do all of these specific tasks that we just discussed. Another interesting announcement that was made was the support for Azure OpenAI SDK. So this SDK provides you full support for Azure OpenAI. It is built on top of the OpenAI library. The great part about this is that it is available in the choice of your language, which means if you want to see beyond Python or JavaScript, now you have the ability to use that in .NET, Java, Go, or any other. So it works well just out of the box. So much for all the Foundry and the agents. There were also a couple of announcements around the latest models. Now, this, especially the O1 Preview, the O1 Mini, and the GPT-4o, which is the latest update on the GPT-4o. We have the O8, O6 model, GPT-4o Mini model. But I will say, as of now, we do have later models as well. GPT-4o, for example, when O8, O6 model was created, it provided the opportunity for structured outputs to have your model return structured output to you instead of text, if that was important for your use case. I will say the GPT-4o real-time preview and audio preview was also available. But now the latest GA model, stable version, is GPT-4o 1120. So there is a November 20 version, that is the latest stable GA model. And then if you're even interested further beyond GPT-4o, you would have heard that GPT 4.5 was announced late Feb 27, 2025. Still in preview, but for the documentation, you have limited access to it though. But for the documentation, it provides a lot of improved accuracy, reduced hallucinations compared to GPT-4o. So I am really looking forward to try out GPT 4.5 and let's see how that goes. All right. This was an interesting slide that I found in one of the presentations. So why this was interesting was because if you're doing AI development, you typically have a prompt, and then you have a model. The model will produce a response. So you run some code, and then this is the continuous loop over and over again. But over a period of time, this starts to get a little complex. So if you're going to do this at scale, run multiple conversations with your models, with all kinds of agents producing the output for you, this can kind of get out of hand. So you might start here. If you're starting with AI development, it looks fairly simple at a basic level, but it's just a matter of time. As you scale it, it could get out of hand, which is why it's a good segue into all the Gen AI ops tool chains and stuff that they provide as part of Azure AI. So I think this is a great slide which covers the entire spectrum from one end to the other of all the tooling capabilities and the support that is available out of the box, and a lot, some of which you may or may not be aware of. I learned a few from this myself. So for example, you can easily get started with Azure AI templates. You can start with the chat playground. You can try out a couple of prompts. Then you probably need to customize it for your specific use case. So, because what's available out of the box doesn't always just work or fit in right away with your use case. So, you can customize a lot of that, and then you can start using Azure AI Search or Fabric to ground your responses. What that means is if you want your assistant, for example, to speak out of certain knowledge bases alone and not rely on its foundational training, you can tell it that you need to refer to only these PDF documents or these JSON documents, and that's how you ground it, the assistant in that. And that the way you would do that is you would bring it into tools like Azure AI Search or Fabric to do so. You can also fine tune with Azure AI agents or machine learning. You can go start experimenting with Prompty and Azure AI Foundry, which is a great experimentation framework like we looked at. So make use of all the tracing. You can actually debug your application. Then you move to production. So where you're going to now require orchestration, you'll need to orchestrate with semantic kernel or LangChain. And of course, you need some automation with GitHub Actions and whatnot. I mean, all the way right up to App Insights, right? So that's how you would really build an end-to-end solution, a Gen AI application, and definitely a good start with the chat playground, but then all the fantastic tooling that is available across the board. So more on that in breakout session 119. But in in other breakout sessions, this was also discussed sort of in detail. So let me show you a quick demo of another interesting feature that was released. This was the GitHub models. So if you have not tried GitHub models just yet, I would highly recommend that you do so. Let me play this video for you. And you can see that it's just super easy to start experimenting with your models. There is a playground, which is what you're seeing right now. You go to github.com, log in with your credentials, go to Marketplace, click a model that you want, and you can try, right? So you want to compare and see what you're doing side by side, you can do that. So if I would run this prompt, like write a short story about an astronaut, you can see side by side how the responses would come from two different models. And it is going to come back. It will return the response at once. And certain models will be slower, certain models not so much. So it's a great tool. You can start getting an API key. You can start running it in a code space, and you can use your token as an authentication key. So basically, super easy to start building and using these models because it does not take a lot of deployments. You can just go in, you can use your keys, and you can start running it in a code space then and there itself. So that was very interesting, I thought. So if you have not tried out GPT-4o, sorry, if you have not tried out GitHub models yet, that's a great place to look at, in addition to the playground and in Foundry. Awesome. So that covers most of what was discussed, at least in the agents section. And if you'd like to learn more, there's a lot of fantastic content regarding agents that is out there in the GitHub as well. You can scan the QR code and take time to look at it as well. Let's move on to our second section, which is my favorite section, I'd say, retrieval augmented generation. It's probably, again, a very highly discussed topic in our space, but there's always a lot of continuous improvements in this space that help us with this area. So again, I'll take a few step backs. I'll explain what RAG or retrieval augmented generation is, and then how we go about that. What are some of the latest updates in this area? If you're already working with it, some refresher there, and then we will look at the latest announcements. All right, let's dive in. So I'll start with this slide, which is very powerful and very impactful for me. So most of the times when we talk about RAG or we talk about building RAG applications, our focus, at least primarily, is on the quality of the responses, and for all valid reasons, right? We want to get the best responses, the most accurate, relevant responses for our users, and no harm in that. But again, as you mature in that cycle, as you go through that, you will realize that RAG optimization is a journey. Couldn't have said it better, because there are additional dimensions to the same. You would want to sooner than later start thinking about cost. You would want to think about performance, because let's say even the best quality response, it comes 5 minutes late, may not be a great user experience. Let's say you have a great quality of response and it comes quite fast, but that is going to take substantial investment. That may not be something that you would want. So it's a balance of checks between what you would want to have achieved with across these three dimensions and equally. So how can we balance quality, cost, and performance? Um, and there are ways in which we can do that as well. So let's take a step back and just talk about RAG itself. If you've been working in this space, it's a fairly familiar um, image. You've probably seen other versions or variants of this. And I liked this from Breakout 105 because it was so simple. But as simple as it is, it conveys, I think, the overall picture of what RAG is. And then everything that we build from RAG is basically building on top of this. So let's take a few minutes to just talk about this slide. So if you think about the application, any application, right? Any Gen AI assistant that you can think of, there's always, you start from the left hand side, the user types a question into a text box. That's how the story begins. So what happens there? So then the question gets sent to an orchestrator. So the orchestrator's first job, main job, is to gather that information that's relevant to that particular question that the user is asking. And how you do that is it needs some kind of semantic search system or a retrieval system, as it's better called, which can, first of all, it interprets what the question means, what is the user asking, and then it finds the relevant information for that question. It could be images, documents, pictures, chats, audio, whatnot, whatever will help in answering that question. So once it retrieves that, so you have the question, you have the retrieved content, it sends both that user's questions and series of potentially relevant information to the LLM. Then it will use the power of those LLMs to extract from that information that you just sent, all the contextual information and the user's context. It will put it all together in a response that will hopefully answer the user's question. So it's a really elegant way of putting it all together. It's quite a complex system when you build it, when you actually get to the nitty gritty details of it. But fundamentally, this is what RAG is. You do the search and you have an orchestrator, it retrieves the relevant documents, it brings it together and sends it to the LLM, which generates a response based on the retrieved content and the user's context. Now, when we do the search, the most important thing is that the relevant documents are returned based on the user's question. In other words, the retriever has a huge part to play in this. So, first of all, you need a good indexing system to be able to do that. and then it should be able to retrieve the relevant responses as well. So here's a slide from Breakout 105, the RAG session that was done by Pablo, one of my favorite sessions from Ignite 2024. In Breakout 105, so this slide, it shows how again, you have your options of the vector database. Azure AI Search is a very powerful, has a very powerful index system. It allows the rapid retrieval of these documents. So what makes it work is this really elegant architecture. Right? So it does the query processing, it retrieves the candidates, again, just candidates at that point, it will rank it and then do the synthesis. So the two key highlights here that was at least called out in Ignite 2024 is one, when you do the ranking of the top n articles content that was retrieved, um, first of all, it's not just semantic search. Right? You're not just looking for semantic search. You're incorporating both semantic and keyword search together, so you get the best of both results. But when you apply a semantic ranking algorithm, you return back the top 5 or 10 or 15 results. You really care about, even amongst that, what's the most relevant, what's the first, what's the second, what's the third, right? So that semantic ranking system, how it does that, it uses AI behind the scenes to be able to do that. But there is a new semantic RAG tuned L2 ranker system that actually helps with that. There's also a new tool for query rewriting. This is a new tool in Azure AI Search. If you have if you're familiar with this space, you will know that sometimes when users provide prompts or queries in the text box, it may not necessarily be in the best possible fashion. And if you had to take it as is and send it to the LLM, you may not be as successful. So, what developers have done in the past is they have rewritten the query on their side because they are trying to fill in the blanks for what the user would have potentially left out, because the user would just come in and ask, like, when's the next game, or what's the weather tomorrow, or like, but who is the user, what is their location, what game are they talking about, what product are they interested in. So we would, if we had to take a stab on that and rewrite that query for them and then send that along with the retrieved content to the LLM, our chances of success are much higher. Now, the great news is query rewriting is now available from the platform. So it actually changes the text that the customer or the application put into that search box. In a way, it tries different versions to further improve the results. So the results from the RAG system would be much better. So these two additional updates or improvements in the query engine itself as part of Azure AI Search. Now, if you remember, we talked about when the first slide, one part is improving the quality of the response. The second part is obviously cost. Now, how do I balance that with cost? Now, an interesting new learning from Ignite was with regards to prompt caching. Now, there has always been an excitement around what can I do better to save my costs? Because one of the things that we would know as Gen AI application developers is I can put in all the instructions that I want into my system prompt. But the more my prompt length, the more my cost. And so, what is this screenshot is from the Azure pricing calculator. And if you note, there is a specific section which talk to cached input. So what is this prompt cache input pricing? It's very relevant to RAG because in RAG, as I said, typically we send very large prompts to the models, and really, the larger these prompts are, we embed the relevant documents before the customer's actual question. We send that to the model, but come prompt engineering, it really affects RAG because here you will be able to cache the first couple of lines or section of your prompt, so you can save that money. So if you make sure that your prompt is static in the first sections and then just variable key down below, you'll actually save money because you don't have to pay for that static part of the prompt in your repeated query. So every time you repeat your calls to the API. So that's just kind of a really cool thing there. But so going back to the models itself, there's another question that was asked at Ignite, and I thought was really profound. Most of these models, if not all of it, comes with foundational knowledge, foundational learning. And if you look at the model cards, it will tell you what the cutoff date for those model trainings were as well. Some are October 2023, October 2024. One of the things when you deal with RAG applications is you may not want any of that foundational training. And unless you are doing any unlearning or relearning, you really do not want it to go there. You do not want it to rely on its foundational training to answer that question. You want it to answer only based on the corpus of the knowledge base that you are providing it to about. So, in that aspect, I thought it was very interesting that they talked about some of the small language models, like consider Pi. So, it's trained in such a way that it learns information, language is fact, but it doesn't learn general knowledge. You don't need all of that also. Consider it. So this makes it a great application for RAG because it doesn't know what it doesn't know. So because of that fact, it's also, because it's small, it's cheap to run. So if you're doing a lot of queries, you can save money that way. Pi model is from Microsoft. It's trained to do exactly that. So you can also fine tune the Pi model, right? So let me show you this. Yes. So we've been talking about general purpose models, but even models like 5, you can fine tune it. So that's again something I did not consider it much, but the fact that you can actually fine tune models like 5, it makes it a lot easier because it's small, it's less costly. You can reduce the necessary size of your prompt that way as well, and running it in a more operational way. So something to consider if you are, thinking about reducing your cost and increasing your quality of responses in RAG-based solutions. So that you don't have to embed all of those instructions inside your prompt, increase your cost. Maybe there are other creative ways of solving for it, starting from the choice of your model. So suffice to say, this is all part of a huge Gen AI ops life cycle, which, especially for enterprise level applications, we don't tend to appreciate as much. There is a lot that goes into it. And the story just begins with us selecting a model or creating an application. There are multiple iterations. We try out the applications, we test, we improve, we deploy, we monitor, so on and so forth. So, um, another section, so pivot there, another section that was discussed, especially towards, as we were discussing about the Gen AI life cycle, the operationalizing part of it, the continuous evaluation. I feel like we don't talk about this as much, and it's such an important and critical aspect of Gen AI applications. We talk about a lot about the selection of the models, like how do we make sure we have the best models and the best models that will fit our case. We talk about extensively about building an AI application, but operationalizes, especially with regards to building trustworthy AI applications, trustworthy Gen AI applications, right? So one part is you are definitely going to have capabilities from the tool to evaluate the model. So you might start with asking a human to look at the accuracy of the responses and how good your responses are, but that may not be a scalable and a sustainable solution in the long run. So rather than asking a human to look at the responses for every question and rank it, there is a sophisticated AI system to now do that for you. So that's what evaluation SDK is all about. So there's a new system to implement the evaluation. You can do this pre-prod, you can do this post-production as well. So you're like when you're first developing your prompts and are used in the system before production, you're still playing around with it. You want to know how good it is. After that, if you want to look at it in production as well, you can track your questions over time and still see if it is being answered with accuracy, fluency, coherence, relevance, and whatnot. So one part of it is the evaluation SDK. I'll say the other part I also wanted to call out. This was discussed in various sections in Ignite. Particularly, if you're interested, I would say look into Sarah Bird's sessions on responsible AI and trustworthy AI at Ignite. The risk, the safety, security related sections. So when we talk about building, trustworthy AI, again we talk about mostly we kind of center on the model and how safe is the model that we are choosing, and what are the security vulnerabilities of that model, what are the risks involved, so on and so forth. And we absolutely should, like, that is a good start. We should start with a model, and we should find a model that is a fit for purpose. I always say fit for purpose, because the it what is good for use case A may not be the right one for use case B. So it really boils down to fit for purpose. That said, it doesn't end there. So what we have to acknowledge is there are multiple layers beyond the model that we can actually mitigate risk at. And some of those layers are shown here. So, for example, you have over the model, you have the safety system. And I'll talk a little about that as well. We have the system message or the prompt that you're writing. That's the third layer. And the fourth layer is really the user experience. So, what does that mean? So, as I said about the model layer, you have plenty of options within the model catalog. If you go into Foundry, you can choose which model you are interested in. If you look into the details from the model provider, you will see details on which model needs to be chosen for what purpose, and so on and so forth. You can even compare the models at this point. There are comparison benchmarks, and so on and so forth. But as it said, the model is a good place to start with, probably not your be all end all. I'll also say at this layer, it's interesting when Microsoft has partnered with Hidden Layer, they have a new collection called Azure AI Collection, if you're not familiar with it. So, the interesting part about this particular collection called Azure AI Collection is all the models in there have been scanned for tampering and for malicious code. So it ensures a higher level of security, and you can be rest assured there. There are also features and functionalities within Azure AI Foundry, particularly the Management Center, to ensure that you can deploy models. IT admins can restrict which models the developers can actually use. So, if a developer tries to deploy an unapproved model from the model catalog, the policy will block the action and ensure compliance. So, there's a lot of safety and security, even compliance features within Foundry today. So, so much for the model. So we've selected a good model, and we are happy with that. What additionally can we do? So now we have the Azure AI content safety. And this is really, if you ask me, the second layer is the star of the show. So choosing the right model, as you say, is a good start, but it's not enough. Many models have built in safety features to prevent attacks. But even the best models make mistakes, including fine tuned ones that are optimized for specific domains, because every model is vulnerable to potential attacks. So, to address this, what Microsoft has done is create an AI driven safety system that surrounds the model. So, what content safety does is it monitors both the inputs and the outputs. It detects for mistakes, detects for any vulnerabilities, and it will annotate it, it will block it, it will call you out. You don't have to reinvent or build all of this. You can just connect to the content safety system using content safety APIs, and you immediately have an additional layer of protection for your applications. Again, all of this is accessible through the Azure AI Foundry portal. You can play around with it, and then in code, you can connect to it using your APIs. The third layer. This is the system message, or this is the prompt that you write. So within the prompt itself, there is so much that you can do to ensure the safety and the reliability of your application. If it is not enough that you chose the right model and you instructed the model on how to use it, you've put in your safety system as well, you can go into the playground in Azure AI Foundry, and you can there's a new section there. If you can add a section, it will show you that you can select between a couple of options. So safety system message, you can select harmful content, avoid the ungrounded content, copyright infringement, jailbreaks, or you can select all of that. What that does for you is that it creates prompts for you. It creates the instructions that you can include as part of your prompt, so you don't have to figure out the instructions yourself. So that way, of course, you can further customize it, you can tailor it, align it to your specific needs, but you would have a head start in grounding your responses in more safe content, and making sure that the inputs and the outputs, going out from your application is safe and it's reliable for your end users. So that was quite a bit on RAG. There was a lot of topics that was discussed on RAG. Hopefully, you will find a lot more insightful sessions from looking at the Ignite catalog, and that's the QR code to get you started. And which brings us to our last section on Copilot Studio. So there was a lot of hype and a lot of excitement around Copilot Studio itself. And if you are not familiar with Copilot Studio is the low code offering from Microsoft to build agents and other AI systems. So there's a lot of buzz about it, a lot of sessions on Copilots, and a couple of top highlights here that were talked about. So let's start one by one. So one was around making M365 agents with copilots much easier. So what that means is, what you can do is you can build inside of M365 Copilot, which means if you bring up your Copilot Studio, there's a button you can click, you can create an agent, you'll get a little designer really fast. It's built in Copilot Studio. You can start creating your agent there and there itself. So you create an agent for any topic that you care about, HR, recruitment, marketing. You can create something to even help generation of content. Like you want to write something, write marketing articles, you can do that. So there's a lot of good capabilities. So you can create M365 agents within the Copilot Studio quickly. So that was a killer feature. They also, and I love this part where they emphasized on the just the quality of the responses, right? So it is one thing to connect your copilots and your agents to websites and SharePoint sites and all sorts of knowledge bases, but how good is the answers that is coming out? So there was a lot of talk around what they were doing to improve the quality of the responses. And these are the three major pillars. So one, of course, starting with enhanced models. So now you are able to connect with more better models. There was improvement in the SharePoint search, which is probably the biggest knowledge source that is being connected with Copilot Studio. And there's also, of course, continuous improvements on the knowledge curation part, more knowledge curation there. And just like you would do in your Gen AI applications, monitoring and analytics is now also built in. If you remember the Gen AI Ops lifecycle, um, you know, observability is a huge aspect of this one, and these analytics are now built into Copilot Studio. So you really want to see what your users are doing. You want to see if they are getting the help that they need, if what is their rating on stuff, how can you improve, what your opportunities are. And without analytics, you will not be able to do that. You will not be able to improve, measure, or manage your agent. So extremely helpful feature there. The next one, security and governance. So this is, just because it's low code, it doesn't mean that we can skip the security and the governance protocols, right? So even with low code, as you can create these agents, you want to make sure that they are doing it the right way. because now that we are democratizing this, and then a lot of people can create agents, we want to make sure that they do it in the right way. So there's a lot of security and governance that is built into Copilot Studio. So, for example, if you're an IT admin, you can say, um, you can decide that you don't want certain knowledge sources to be added to Copilot Studio, yeah, for whatever reason. So you can check them out or check those out. So there's a lot of different things that are available within Copilot Studio for you to ensure that you are building secure applications. Okay, so this was cool. Autonomous agents. It was fairly well discussed across Ignite. So you know. The fact is everybody can now go to Copilot and now try out these autonomous agents. So what that means is you have an agent, you can add it to a certain workflow. For example, when an email arrives in a shared mailbox, or let's say someone uploads something to SharePoint, there are lots of different triggers where you can have these autonomous agents there. So that's very exciting to complete the circle and bring it full circle in terms of the capabilities within Copilot Studio. Something very exciting for Copilot users. This is was a really powerful feature, especially in theme of we always have advanced capabilities that are available for pro code developers in terms of Azure AI search and whatnot. But in the theme of better together, this was a great announcement in trying to see how even Copilot Studio users can now connect to Azure AI search and Azure AI Foundry and use some of the features that are there. So you want to use the models that are there, you want to use some of the other features. That was just great. So good segue into our next topic, which is bring your own model. So previously, that was not possible. So now you can bring your own model, which means in Azure AI, we talked about it. We have a lot of models available there. We can add those models into your instance of Azure AI. We can use them here. So within Copilot Studio, we only had OpenAI models that were available in Copilot Studio. So they were now the only ones that was GA as well. So now we can add all the different models that are in Azure AI already, and we can use them within Copilot Studio. So that's exciting. Um, the next one, and we have just a couple of more here, and I'll just two more here, and I will pause after that. We have Microsoft 365 Agents SDK. So you will actually be able to do something with code with Copilot. So that's a little tricky because Copilot is low code. I understand. So why do you need pro code as well, right? But this is a good example of, let's say you want to start something with Copilot, but then you decide that, yeah, because you don't have a lot of developer knowledge, but then later you want to move from that code, you want to build on top of that, and you want to advance that. It is possible now because you have the agents SDK. So it is possible for you to leverage on the success of what you have built in Copilot Studio and take it from there. Last but not least, this is again use case specific, but improvement in the speech capabilities of Copilot Studio. So you want to create a speech agent, you can do that now. You can hook it up to telephony numbers. You can have like a help desk if you want to. You can use all these Gen AI features that you have in Copilot Studio connected to a speech bot. Really exciting because you can build something really advanced here using Copilot Studio. So those were some of the major features that were announced, major announcements or updates from Copilot related stuff at Ignite. And think that brings us to a wrap. So we have discussed three major items. There were, again, a lot more at Ignite, but I think these three are core pillars as you think about building tomorrow's AI solutions. Being able to understand and fundamentally grasp the principles behind RAG, retrieval augmented generation. Secondly, around agents, and everyone's talking agents, everyone's talking building agents and evaluating and putting that into production. It's becoming more and more real. And third, and not the least, but also increasing our support for the low code no code community, where it is possible for everyone to build AI solutions for tomorrow. So with that, I will pause for a second and I will look at the comment section, and let's see if we have any comments. All right. Looks like we have no questions, and I can give it a few more seconds. But looks like we are all good, and we are good to wrap up if there are no other questions. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Liji, for this presentation. Oh, it looks like something is coming up. There's a few questions coming up, so I'll let you address them and come back shortly.
Absolutely. Let's do it. So, yeah, let's take a look at this. So, the first question comes from Sam. Sam asks, any impact to responsible AI? And that's a great question, Sam. As I was saying, everything is an impact to responsible AI. And just in the interest of time, I wish we could go a little more deeper into that section. It's an area that I care about very deeply. Um, 2 years back when we started building Gen AI applications, and when this whole sort of technology took off, uh, the focus was more on how do we make this work, like what all can we do with this technology, getting people sold on the idea. That is not the situation anymore today. The focus is not on building Gen AI applications. The focus is on building safe and secure and reliable and trustworthy Gen AI applications, because that's the only way it will sustain, especially if you're thinking about enterprise production level applications. There's been a lot of tooling and improvement in the support for to build responsible AI. Again, I highly recommend checking out Sarah Bird's and team's Ignite sessions. A lot of continuous improvements in those areas. What their red teaming is doing, what the tooling and the support from the platform is. Few of which we discussed in the deck today, but obviously not covering it all. I would highly recommend checking out the content safety that is provided by Azure AI, because that is very powerful and something that is applicable for all Gen AI applications, irrespective of the use case. Thank you for your question, Sam. Moving on, Kalyan. Um, will that work for structured data? I'm going to assume that what that is, and probably the ask is what works for in terms of Gen AI applications for structured data. Will it work for, sorry, unstructured data? Will it work for structured data as well? I'd say it depends. Yes and no. There is a lot more success with unstructured data, because generative AI is based was fundamentally to solve for that problem statement, and structured data was something that the world knew how to solve for with traditional databases and relational databases and of such. That said, there are ways in which we are trying to solve for structured data. There are specific use cases. Yes, it is possible to do so. It is also possible to even produce structured responses right now. So you want the responses of the model to be in a structured fashion. It is possible to do so depending on the model that you pick. For example, we talked about the 0806 model, and it is possible. So not as popular a use case as the unstructured, but definitely there. Thank you, Kalyan. Moving on, Raj uh, asks, What is the easy way to understand different models and its capabilities to determine whether it's suitable for my development? Great question. Um, a good place to start is the model catalog. So if you are considering various models, I'd say look at the model catalog. Obviously, there is an overwhelming number of models in there, but across all the models, there will be um, details provided by their providers in terms of what this can be used for and whatnot. It goes to say that there are definitely I try to approach this from a constraints based model. In other words, for every use case that I look at, I try to evaluate and understand what are the constraints that I'm operating under, and that has helped inform my decisions regarding which models I need to choose and which not. So let's say, hypothetically, the use case that I am dealing with requires a structured output to come through. It's just recency bias, which is some conversation I had right now. So let's say I want the output to be in a structured format. There's not a lot of models that will be able to produce that output in a structured response. So it narrows down my funnel considerably. So let's say I have a cost constraint. So that narrows down even further. So constraints based model is where I would start. But from that constraints based model, when you've funneled it down, then you have a smaller set of models to actually choose from. You would choose the models across the three dimensions or the levers that we discussed: cost, performance, and the third one I forget right now. So those three options or those three levers are highly critical as you select a model, because it is required to have quality, it is required to have cost, so reduce the cost and the performance as well. And for your specific use case, you put that in a certain with, okay, these are the constraints that I have. You should be able to arrive at a model. And a lot of this is by trial and error. I mean, research is great, you can read up, but it's worked for me. A lot of it is by trial and error. Try out the models, which is why GitHub playgrounds, the chat playgrounds in Azure AI Foundry is extremely useful, because you don't have to write a single line of code to try something out. You just need to get the model, line it up, deploy it, try it out. If it works for you, compare it against each. Yes, you can do the benchmark studies, but unless you actually tinker it around with it and play with it and put it in perspective to your actual use case, I don't think you'll find one that is best for you. Great question, Raj. Thank you. And last one, probably we have time for to just take this one as well. Sam, we are seeing new models coming available almost on a weekly basis. How customers and businesses feel about that in terms of adaptability and trust? Good question, that's probably a rhetorical question yourself. Like, it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming for the developers themselves to keep pace with the proliferation of technology. That said, which I think it's more important to be aware of what support is available out of the box from that platform, so that you don't waste time on building what is already there. You can stay hyper focused on the business itself and the use case that you're trying to fix, and for you to inform your customers and your stakeholders on and build that adaptability, build that trust, and like, want to ask, I just heard a new thing that happened today in the market. Do we need to use that? So that informed decision comes from you being able to quickly play around with models and figure it out, and not just read what's hot off the press, right? Because the press can always say that. We need to actually, the way that we stay on top of this is by enabling us and empowering ourselves with the tools and the support that we need to play around with these models quickly as and when they are released. I'll take one last one. This is, we are up for time, I know. Satar asks, I'm sorry, saying that name right. Which Azure resource can I use to store conversation history, App Insights, log everything in App Insights, take it to Cosmos DB, and then you can build your entire pipeline using ADF and Databricks and whatnot and get into Power BI. Sorry, that was 10 seconds. I wanted to answer that question. Thank you, everyone. Gosh, I know we're up for time, and I really appreciate everyone's time and attention today. Have a fantastic rest of your day and your week. Bye.
Thank you so much, Liji, for this session. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for the great interaction and questions as well. If you have one more minute here in the chat, feel free to complete our survey. We always appreciate any feedback or what you'd like to see more on the reactor. So you can scan the QR code on the screen. The event code, if you're going through the AKA link, is 25029. And yeah, thank you again so much for this great session, Liji. It was a pleasure having you on, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you. Bye.